Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Office of National Scholarships Advisement, or ONSA, General Information Session. My name is Shay Masterson. I am one of the advisors in our office, and specifically the Program Manager of Outreach and Inclusion, which entails many things, one of which is doing our general information sessions like the one you've joined us for today. I do want to let you all know that I am happy to take questions throughout today's session. Please, if you want to pose a question, you can always type it into the chat. If you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, then I'll save time at the end for that. But until we get to that live Q&A portion, please keep yourself muted for the recording. And if you have questions in the moment, you can feel free to pop them into the chat. And if it's something that I'm not going to be addressing shortly anyways, I'll try to address it as those questions get asked. If I know it's coming up in the presentation, I'll wait a moment until I answer it. So, just so you know what we're going to be covering today, first off, we're going to give you a basic understanding of what national scholarships are. So when we say the Office of National Scholarships Advisement, what exactly do I mean by national scholarships? Then we're going to go over some categories of awards. So of those 100 or so national scholarships that our office advises on, what are some different categories, or essentially what are some different benefits that these awards provide you, because they're all different. And then we'll talk about, okay, well, here's all of the great, amazing opportunities that are out there. How do you build your path to success and eventually become a competitive applicant now or in the future for any number of these awards? It will vary slightly by each one, but there's a general kind of guide of path to success we'll provide. And then we'll wrap up with what is the support that our office is here to provide you with in your pursuit of these kinds of scholarships, and what are the next steps for you if you want to engage with our office, okay? So that's just a basic idea of what we'll be covering today. So first and foremost, what are national scholarships? So kind of an unofficial tagline: free money to do really cool things that also look good on your resume. But it goes a little bit deeper than that. So of the 100 or so awards we advise on, again, they're all different. But there are a few things that kind of collectively define or identify the types of awards we advise on in our office. So first off, when we say national, we mean that the funding is coming from a national or international source. So these are not ASU scholarships. They're coming from a federal agency, a private foundation, an international organization, something like that, that is beyond the ASU level and even beyond the state level, that this award is being funded and provided by that kind of national or international source. With that, that means the applicant pool is also beyond ASU. So these are awards that are available to students who are across the country and sometimes across the world. So everything we advise on is for students in some form or fashion who are attending US-based universities, but then some are also open to students who are attending universities in other countries as well. It just kind of depends. So on a very basic level, when we talk about national scholarships, that's kind of what we mean, is the funding and the applicant pool is coming from across the country and sometimes across the world, depending on the specific award. Some offices like ours are actually called international scholarships, Office of International Awards, those kinds of things. So that's another way to look at it. Another kind of classifier of the types of awards that we advise on is most of them will not provide you with general academic funding for your undergraduate expenses, okay? So of those 100 or so awards, there's really only a handful that will provide you with general funding towards your undergraduate costs while you attend ASU. So tuition and fees, room and board, other extraneous costs of attending ASU to get your bachelor's degree. That's not the type of award we advise on for the most part. There are a handful of those. They are very specialized and niche in terms of who they're targeted towards, in terms of what are the things that you want to do in the future, not necessarily your major, not necessarily other demographic information, but what are the things that you want to do in the future is how most of those are framed. Whether the award we advise on comes with general academic funding or not, it is experiential. So everything we advise on provides you with some kind of experience, either in its totality or in addition to whatever funding it provides you with. We're going to talk about what those experiences are when we talk about categories of awards. Last but not least, the way we define kind of national scholarships or look at the awards that we advise on is they are all mission driven. And what I mean by that is whoever has funded or started these particular scholarships or fellowships or grants or awards or programs, whatever they choose to call them. We use scholarship as a general umbrella term, but some of the funding entities choose different words to identify the particular program. But they're all mission driven. So that agency or foundation or international organization is trying to fulfill some kind of mission, and either the way or one way that they try to fulfill that mission is through this scholarship or fellowship. So for instance, the U.S. Department of State is a huge provider of national scholarships. There's a number of awards we advise on that are funded by the U.S. Department of State. In general, the U.S. Department of State has a mission that revolves around U.S. diplomacy. So diplomatic relations between the United States and other countries, which keeps the United States safe and secure and promotes democracy abroad, right? In a nutshell. It goes a little bit further than that, but in a nutshell, that's the mission of the U.S. Department of State. So every award that they fund in some way is seen as a way to promote U.S. diplomacy with other countries and democracy abroad. So a lot of those opportunities are to send students from the U.S. to other countries to be what they call citizen diplomats or citizen ambassadors. So you can be a positive representation of the United States while you interact in a effective way with people from other places to help promote diplomacy on a very grassroots level, right? That's the idea. Each one goes a little bit more in depth than that, depending on the specific award, but that just gives you an idea of what I mean by mission driven, okay? So when we talk about national scholarships in our office and things that we would support ASU students and alumni in pursuing, that's kind of some classifiers that we look at in terms of determining if it's an award that we would support you with the application process or not. Does the funding come from a national or international source? Is it open to students from across the country or in some cases across the world? Is it mission driven? And is there some kind of larger experience beyond just your academic costs that it provides you with as a student or alumni? Again, those who are just joining us, welcome, welcome. Please feel free to put your questions into the chat at any time. I will keep an eye on those, and then we'll have a live Q&A at the end as well, whatever you prefer to ask your questions. So what are those experiences or really cool things that national scholarships can help you do? So there's a few different categories or types of experiences or the purpose that this particular scholarship or award provides you with if you're ultimately selected. One big one, there's many of those awards that we advise on that can help you study abroad. This can be short-term or long-term. It can be while you're an undergraduate student or after you've graduated or while you're a graduate student. It can be to any number of countries to do any number of things, depending on the specific award. But in general, there's a number of study abroad options that our office advises on, each one in terms of when you can apply, what you can do in terms of study abroad, and who is eligible to apply will vary by each one. Some of the study abroad awards are, this is a study abroad program, an opportunity for you as a student or recent alumni to go abroad, and it's fully funded for you to do that thing. Some are, you identify the study abroad program you want to go on, and you can apply for the scholarship to help fund it. So for instance, there's the Gilman Scholarship, which is a Department of State funded award for U.S. citizens who are Pell Grant recipients to do any study abroad program for any length of time while they are still an undergraduate student, as long as it's credit bearing. Then there is the Fulbright UK Summer Institute, or FUCSI as we call it, which is a specific study abroad program to the UK, which is about 4 weeks over the summer for first and second year undergraduates to go to the UK for one of their institutes that they've already have in place. And if you're selected for that scholarship, it's fully funded for you to go and participate in that specific institute in the UK over the summer. Okay, those are just two examples. There's other awards to go abroad as well, but that gives you an idea of what I mean by some are fully funded opportunities and some are awards, can provide some funding towards whatever study abroad program you've chosen, right? Eligibility, again, when you can apply, that's all going to vary. Another kind of experience or category of award we advise on is some of them are to learn a foreign language, and specifically a critical need language as deemed critical by the U.S. government. So what that typically means is a language that is not commonly taught or spoken in the U.S. So if you think the language is widely available to learn at U.S. universities, not necessarily ASU, because we teach a lot more languages than a lot of other countries, but Spanish is pretty standard, French is pretty standard. Other Western European languages tend to be pretty standard. It's more of the Eastern European, Asian, African languages that are deemed critical foreign languages. If you want to learn or continue learning one of those awards, then there may be an award to help you do that. Some of those are to just continue learning it while you're here at ASU. Some of them are virtual language programs, and some of them can help you go abroad to countries where those are spoken to further your language skills. Some of those require you to already have a certain level in those languages, and some of them don't. Some of them are for very specific languages, and some of them are more broad, although you would typically still not be able to do like Spanish or Western European languages through these kinds of awards. Some of them are also fully funded opportunities, and some of them are where you can apply for funding to help your study of those languages. So if language learning is something that's important to you, relevant to you, something you're already doing or really want to do, then there may be an award or many awards that you can apply for that can help you with that. Another category or experience that national scholarships can provide you with is the opportunity to do research. So this can be being paid to assist somebody in their research, or it can be to receive funding to conduct whatever research you're trying to do. Most of the undergraduate research awards are for you to assist others in their research, and you'll get paid to do so while you do that. And then some of them are for postgraduate or while you're a graduate student are to help fund you while you do your research. But mostly for undergraduates, it's to assist in other people's research. Some of those are to do so here at ASU or other places in the country, and some of them can help you go abroad to do research. Some of them are specifically for STEM students, but some of them are for students in the social sciences or the humanities. Some are for any of the above. So not field specific. And even within a particular field, not necessarily within one specific subject within that field, right? So if doing research is something that you have been doing or want to get more experience doing, or you plan on doing in the future, there may be an award that can help you do some of that research experience. For instance, currently for second and third year undergraduate students, there is the Dodd-Rise program that is open. That is for summer research internships in Germany. It's specifically for second and third year undergraduate students that are in the STEM fields. If that describes you and you would be interested in spending your summer in Germany doing research, then you may want to consider applying for Dodd-Rise right now to help you go do that. Then there's other awards out there too, again, some that can just help you do your research that you're already doing, or other research within the US. If you're an online student, ASU does have virtual opportunities for internships, for research. Most of the awards we advise on are going to require you to be physically in the space where the lab is happening. But there are online opportunities to engage in research as well as an ASU student. Another big category of awards we advise on is things to pursue graduate studies. So while at the beginning I said most of the awards that we advise on will not help you fund your undergraduate expenses, with a few exceptions, there are a number of awards we advise on that will help you fund your graduate studies. These depend greatly on where you're going to attend graduate school and what kind of graduate program you're going to pursue and to what end. Like, why are you pursuing that graduate degree? What do you ultimately want to do with it? And why is a graduate degree a part of that path? Some of those are for master's degrees. Some of those are for PhDs. Some of those can be applicable to a professional program as well, like an ND or a JD. It really just depends on the particular award. And like I said, some are for going to a specific school or going to school within the US, or some are for going to school within the UK, or some can be more broad. But if you have your sights set on pursuing graduate school, then there may be an award or multiple awards that you can apply for that would help fund your graduate studies or fully fund your graduate studies, depending on the award. Some of these you apply for while you are applying to graduate school, and some of them you apply for while you're already in graduate school. If you're already in graduate school, then you would work with somebody who is at your current university as a grad student to apply for those awards. If you're an ASU grad student, there's somebody in our office who would work with you on that. But if you're a grad student at another institution, you would likely work with somebody at their institution to apply for those awards. If you are an undergraduate student or alumni of ASU and you are applying to grad school, whether that's at ASU or elsewhere, then our office would support you on applying to graduate fellowships. And then last but not least, some of the awards can help you gain some kind of professional experience in your field of interest. So, for instance, there's the Yale Conservation Scholars Early Leadership Initiative. This is a summer internship in a conservation-focused organization or agency in the northeastern United States. So they pay you to go to kind of like the New England area and live there for the summer and intern with like a nonprofit organization or a federal agency that has some kind of focus on conservation efforts, sustainability efforts, and that they'll pay you a stipend while you're there to do this professional experience in your field, right? Some are more kind of broad and would help you gain exposure and networking with folks within your field. Like there's the Public Policy and International Affairs Fellowship, which is a summer grad school prep program in which you also interact with and are mentored by folks who are in policy or international affairs fields. So it helps you build towards your future career in that field. And they also don't guarantee you an internship, but many of the fellows land internships for their senior year. It's the junior fellowship, so specifically for junior level undergraduate students. So you go for that grad level prep program over the summer and then get ongoing kind of support that often leads to internship experiences during the school year. So those are, and I've name dropped a handful of awards. But again, we advise on 100 or so awards in our office. So if none of the things that I name dropped specifically today really pique your interest, that doesn't mean that there's not a national scholarship or multiple national scholarships that would be of interest to you. That was just to give you an idea of what we're talking about and the kinds of things that you can do through a national scholarship if you were to pursue any one of these awards. So once folks understand what kind of awards we advise on, the next question is, well, how do I become a competitive applicant for these kinds of awards? They're highly competitive because of they're open to so many students or applicants, and because they're so the opportunity they provide you with can be so life-changing that they are competitive. Lots of people apply for them and very few actually are awarded. So how do you become competitive for whatever awards it is you're wanting to pursue? So again, the specifics are going to vary depending on the specific award, and that mostly aligns with what are your ultimate goals and interests, what are the things that are important to you. So some ways to build towards that is, first, if you are interested in something, if you are passionate about something, if there is a particular issue or field that you say, this is really where I want to have an impact in my life, where I want to learn more about it, I want to gain experience in it, and I ultimately want to be kind of a person that's out there working in this to address this thing in the future, then follow that. Look for ways to get engaged in that particular issue or interest right now. That can be through the university, through clubs and organizations, research experiences, student jobs, but it also doesn't have to be within the university system. It can be in your larger community, volunteering, at your local hospital or at the nature preserve that is in your city or town, right? So whatever you're saying are the issues that are important to you, the things that you're interested in, follow those in a way that is meaningful to you. And that doesn't mean that it just has to be your academic and professional interests. So oftentimes, undergraduate students get a sense of like, I just need to focus on what I'm trying to do for the future right now, whatever my academic major is, whatever my career goals are. But really, you are a multidimensional person. We all are. You are not singular in your areas of interest, and only being focused on one thing for the next however many years you're an undergraduate student, one, will lead to burnout. Two, will close you off from learning about other things that are out there that you might also be interested in pursuing in the future. And three, it just leads to being kind of one dimensional. And fellowships do look for well rounded candidates. So they want to see that whatever the issue or interest you say you have for that particular award is something that is evidenced in the things that you're involved in already to some degree. Doesn't mean you have to be doing all of the things revolving around that issue or interest, but to some degree you have a commitment there. But they also want to see that you're a well-rounded individual, that you have hobbies and other things that are important to you and interest you. For instance, I was just working with a student on an application to work in international affairs in the future, and it's an international program. And it was a lot about what is your interest in international affairs and policy and whatnot. But this individual is also somebody who is a musician. It's not what they want to do professionally, but it's something that they've done extracurricularly in the past. And they were using that as a way to talk about how they're going to adjust to and engage in the community that they would go to if they do get this international experience that they're applying for. So national scholarships like to see that kind of extracurricular, non-academic or professional interest aligned activity as well. It shows who you are as a whole person. So clubs, organizations, jobs, research, volunteering, internships, whatever the case is, the things that are of interest to you, look for ways to engage in those things. All of these fellowships are going to be looking for folks who are leaders in some form or fashion, and they have the potential to be leaders in the future in the thing that they say they want to do, right? If you're saying that, foreign policy is something that's really important to you and you want to work in foreign policy in the future and you want to be one of the people that help shape our foreign policy, right? You want to be a leader in that field, then you need to demonstrate that you have the potential to be a leader by having already been a leader in some form or fashion. That does not mean that you have to be the president of every club and the chair of every committee or have really important and impressive titles in the things that you do. Sometimes the best leader in the room is one without a title. So what I mean by be a leader is look for ways to practice and hone your leadership style and skills in the spaces that you show up in, right? So this can be in your class. It can be in the clubs and organizations that you are involved in. It could be in your job that's not relevant to school at all. It could be in your community that you're involved in outside of the university, whether that be through teaching classes at the community center or helping volunteer knocking on doors to spread the word about X issue, right? When they look for demonstrated leadership, they're really looking for you to explain how you show up in spaces where there's a problem that needs addressing, or where there's a group of people who maybe aren't all in agreement, but they need to come to a consensus on how to move forward about a particular thing. How you help others come to understand complex issues. Those are the kinds of things that you can talk about to show your potential to be a leader in the future. So look for ways to practice those things and think about how you show up in those kinds of experiences. You need to, while you're an undergraduate student, begin building your academic and professional relationships. Or if you're a non-traditional undergraduate student, continue doing that while you are an undergraduate student. You may have already been doing some of that if you're a traditional undergrad student too. But we want you to foster these relationships in meaningful ways. So this includes your professors, your advisors, mentors, supervisors, folks within the university and outside of the university, all of the above. And what I'm really saying is build your network. And I know network or networking can sometimes be somewhat of a dirty word. I'm not really sure why, but it has become somewhat of I don't like that word. But the folks that are around you who are doing things that you want to do in the future or have similar goals for their future that you do, or challenge you in some way to think differently, to push yourself further, these folks are going to be your overall support system as you move forward through school and through life. And your professors and your advisors and your mentors who are part of the university system are part of that network. So those folks where you're sitting in a class that they're leading or with them or at an event with them and meet them, that there's just something that clicks. They say something about, research that they're involved in that really speaks to the research that you want to do. Or they talk about a personal experience that they've had, which really aligns with something that you've experienced yourself. Or their personality just seems to be something that you want to spend more time with. Look for those cues of people where there's some kind of instant connection or draw to them and build those relationships in a meaningful way. If it's a professor, don't just take the one class with them and then move forward with your life and forget it. Try to take another class with them. Go to their office hours. If you're in person, ask them if you can meet up for coffee and hear more about their research or the project they're working on or how they got to where they are today. If you're online, you can still do those things. It would just be virtually, right? If they're talking about events that they're involved in or going to be attending and it sounds interesting to you, then show up to those things as well. It's going to show that you have an interest in whatever that issue or topic is beyond just doing well in a class. So that's just some ideas of how you can build those specifically relationships with faculty members. But again, your academic and professional relationships go beyond your faculty members as well. This is important just as you move forward and build towards whatever future success you have envisioned for yourself, to have that support system around you. With national scholarships and fellowships, these folks will also become likely referees is what we call them, or people who write your letters of recommendation, right? And the more you know them, the better they know you, the things you've done and the things that you want to do, the better able they are going to be to write a compelling letter for you when you apply to a national scholarship or fellowship or grad school or whatever the case may be. If they just had you in that one lecture, that one semester, and never saw you again or spoke to you again, they may be able to write you a letter of recommendation. It's probably not going to be a very good one. It won't be very detailed and impressive to the readers. That's not the reason to build those relationships, but when it comes to national and scholarships and fellowship applications, it will be necessary to have those. Last, not least, kind of least, keep your grades up. All of these awards are merit-based, so they will consider your grades, your transcripts, the rigor of your courses, your academic pursuits, even beyond your transcripts as well. So that's important to keep in mind. Some will have very hard and fast minimum GPAs. Some of those minimum GPAs are relatively high, like a 3.7 or a 3.9. Some of them don't have minimum GPAs at all. Some of them have kind of lower, more average minimum GPAs, like a 3.0 or a 3.2. My point is, don't lose sight of the grades, but it is not the most important thing when it comes to your national scholarship and fellowship applications. That all of those, whether they have a minimum GPA or not, whether it's a high minimum GPA or not, and you meet that minimum GPA, that's just about meeting the standard. They're really going to be looking at all of the other stuff that we talked about in much more detail than just your GPA or the classes that you've taken. So again, they're really looking for well-rounded individuals, and they look at your application in a holistic way for the most part. So those are my general tips. It can get more specific from there if you have specific awards in mind, but that comes up with how is ONSA here to support you in your exploration and pursuit of national scholarships now or in the future. So we provide a broad range of support when it comes to pursuing these kinds of awards. We do one-on-one and group advising. If you want to just explore what your options are based on your interest, you can schedule a general undergraduate advising appointment to talk through who you are, what your goals are, what things are interesting to you, what kinds of experiences you want to have over the next few years. And we can talk about the awards that might align with you and the things that you want to do in the next few years. Once it comes time to actually apply for a specific award, you will schedule advising appointments to get general guidance and feedback on your application materials for that award. Some of that advising happens one-on-one and some of it happens in small groups. It just depends on the award and when you're applying and everything. Some of the larger awards where we have more students applying in a given cycle, we do small group advising. Some of the awards that are a little bit more niche and have smaller numbers of students from ASU applying, doesn't mean they're less competitive, but smaller number of students from ASU applying, those a lot of times are one-on-one advising. It really just depends. And that advising, again, includes both general advice on like how to approach the application, things to keep in mind as you work on the application, steps of the application process. But then once you are actually actively working on it, most of our time is spent giving writing support. So all of these applications will require written statements. Some of them, it's one personal statement, and some of them, it's multiple statements that all have a different focus. Some of them, it's short, very short written responses. Some of it's long written responses. Like there's an award that requires a 6 to 8 page paper that you write, whereas another one that I'm working with some students on right now has 4 short responses that all have to be 200 words or less, right? It just depends on the specific award, but they'll all require written responses in some form, and that's what we spend most of our time doing. So you don't have to just figure it out on your own. We will give you guidance on writing those, and then we'll give you feedback on your specific written materials. If you apply for something that has an interview stage, this is usually not a part of the application. It's further along in the selection process. But if you do apply for something that requires an interview, we will support you in preparing for that interview as well. So doing practice interviews with you, giving you general advice on interviews. Sometimes it's very different than like a job interview would be, depending on the specific award. So we can give you that kind of guidance and support as well. If you have find an award that requires nomination or endorsement by your university, we manage that process. We don't decide if you're nominated or endorsed, we just manage the process. And what that typically looks like is you submit your application at a preliminary deadline to be considered by a committee of folks that are from across the university who have a particular background, expertise, or interest in whatever that specific award focuses on. And those folks review all of the applications for nomination or endorsement and decide who gets nominated or endorsed and who does not. For some of those awards, we are limited to like only 4 or 6 or 8 applicants to nominate. And some of them we can nominate or endorse as many as that come forward. So it really just depends on the particular award, but again, we'll manage that process. So if you come across something on our database or just in general that requires nomination or endorsement by your university, you will likely work with us on that process. And then we're just here in general to be your support and cheerleader through this process, help keep you motivated, check in with you, have a sounding board along the way. If you get the news that you weren't hoping for, we can be there to commiserate with you. Just in general, we're here to really support you through the entire process of pursuing national scholarships or fellowships. And you can apply for multiple of these awards in a given cycle or over the course of several years. So there's no limits. There's limits sometimes on what you can accept, especially in a given cycle. But we're here to support you as much or as little as you apply for or want to pursue. So if you go to our website, onsa.asu.edu, onsa.asu.edu, you will be able to see kind of where you can follow up with some next steps. So I'm actually going to, if you go to our website, onsa.asu.edu, this is what you will find. This is the page you will find. And if you want to schedule a general advising appointment with our office, you can do that right here from the Make an Appointment button. If you're just wanting to explore your options, like I talked about, again, you would schedule a general undergraduate advising appointment. It's going to ask you to log in with your ASU Right. You'll select that from the dropdown and you'll pick a date and time that works for you. You choose whether you want to meet in person or virtually. If you do choose in person, that means you will be meeting us on the Tempe campus in our office, which is in Honors Hall on the Tempe campus, or you can choose that virtual option, whatever works best for you. I also encourage you, if you're not already receiving our weekly bulletin, to subscribe to that with the subscribe to weekly bulletin button on our website. This we send out once a week, and we inform of upcoming events like this one that we have, where we might have more award-specific information sessions or more general workshops that can help with just like pursuing national scholarships or fellowships in general. It really just depends. So subscribe to that bulletin to receive that once a week. And then also, if you want, you can spend some time looking through our scholarship database. This is where we have that 100 or so awards that we advise on listed. And you can just filter through the whole list if you want, or you can apply certain filters. Like if you are an international student, you can apply that filter and it would show you only the options that are open to international students. If you are a first-year undergraduate and wanting to know what you can apply for this year specifically, then you can apply that filter and it'll show you only the things that are open to you this year. Or if you're planning ahead, you could look at that. If you're looking for something that that is more in your field of interest, then we do have some, not majors, but fields of interest that we have listed under focus. And this doesn't have to necessarily be aligned with your major or not. It could just be what you're overall interested in doing in kind of your life. And you can apply one of those filters, although a lot of the awards we advise on are not specific in this way, though some are, so that can be helpful. And then the purpose is really that category. So are you looking for an international experience? Are you looking for general academic funding? Because although most don't, there are a few awards that do provide that support. Are you looking for something that's more research oriented? So you can use that filter. And then the communities one, there are some awards that are for that are specifically for, or that are really, they encourage applicants from specific communities. So you can also apply that filter if that was applicable. Just keep in mind that doesn't mean those are the only awards that you would be eligible for if you apply that filter. So some different ways to look through potential awards you might be interested in. If you are going to have a general advising appointment, it is a good idea to at least take a scan of this database and get an idea of some awards that you might want to talk about and a little bit more further in an advising appointment, although that's just a starting point. So some general next steps for you. I didn't really see any questions other than, am I talking by the note taker, which obviously I am still talking. And yes, as JD pointed out, it is a lot. I know I've thrown a lot at you just now. I didn't see any other questions come through the chat, but that is all I have to share with you today. So if you do have any questions, you can feel free to ask them now, again, by either putting them in the chat, or now you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question that way if you would like.
I actually do have a question.
Great.
So with the online, like I'm older than most students.
Yeah.
Not all the students are adults, but I'm a little bit older. And so sometimes me being able to like take advantage of these opportunities also is influenced by whether or not I can earn income while I'm on these types of things.
Mhm.
I know this is a silly question because education should be like a thing, but some of us are like students and independent and on our own. It's not
Mhm.
a type of thing. And we don't necessarily have parents or somebody to kind of help us. Like, I have bills and debt. So,
Yeah.
is there any parts of these programs that kind of help with that, or would a scholarship essentially do that, where it's like there would be enough of it to cover your living expenses there, and there may be some things left over. Like how do people do that, like when they're non-traditional adults?
So my answer, which is usually going to be my answer unless we're talking about a specific award and specific circumstances, is it depends. So the easy answer though is yes, there are awards that will at minimum provide you with funding while you're doing the thing to do the thing, right? So for instance, if it's study abroad, it's going to cover your expenses to go and engage in that study abroad experience in some cases, right? In some instances, it will provide you with funding to do that thing and a stipend to cover whatever other expenses you have while you're doing that like summer experience. It really just depends. Also, there's a lot of opportunities where the only kind of thing where you would have to be in a specific place doing a specific thing is, let's say, for like a week or 5 days or a couple of weeks, right? And it's funded for you to do that thing, but it's not necessarily taking away a huge chunk of time from your regular life and your regular job. So does that help?
It does. It does.
Okay.
Thank you. That's the one thing I got is kind of like, oh man, you want to take advantage of these things, but other aspects of life don't pause when you're doing it. And it's not always accommodating to all types of students. So thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely. And there are definitely awards we advise on that are not, right? But that's something that we can talk about more in depth in a general advising appointment, is kind of, what are your circumstances? What are you looking to do? And what are your circumstances? And is there anything that would kind of align and be more flexible and understanding of those kinds of circumstances?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Kelly, it looks like, has a question.
Hello, yeah. So I actually kind of have one that goes kind of well, I kind of got two. One is stop, Bellamy. Sorry, I'm talking to my 3-year-old. One is that I am actually an inducted member to the NSLS, and it's the National Society of Leadership and Success. And there's a specific, there's opportunities that are being awarded to NSLS members exclusively. And I was just wondering that if it's coming from my chapter is actually housed at ASU, so there is an ASU chapter. And I was just wondering that if this is an outside or a chapter thing, would I still be able to apply to the global scholarships to cover the trip if I decided to go on one of these trips? Would that be qualified? Like, would that qualify?
Yeah. So it is going to depend on what the specific trip is for. Like where
It's
you'd be
leadership
going.
building and getting to know the culture in Ireland.
So if it is a credit bearing program, potentially. If it's not, probably not, though our office doesn't focus on ASU financial support, but there might be some financial support within the ASU system, like through your academic college or something like that, that could help you engage in some kind of like conference or opportunity like that too.
Well,
so that's
I noticed
another
that
avenue.
when I was looking at the information on the ONSA site, because I was trying to do some research before I even came to this meeting. I'm a Barrett Honors student or Barrett Honors College student,
Yep.
and so it did say that some of these awards will be granted if it's something that pertains to our thesis and research on our thesis, and I feel like this can potentially do so. So that's something. I do have an appointment with an advisor on my specific case.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of get your insight on that. My second question is, when I applied to speak to an advisor, it actually required me to upload a resume and my unofficial transcripts at ASU. I am in my junior year and I do have a 4.0 GPA and I've been here for a few semesters now. However, not all my grades are showing on my unofficial transcript, and the resume that I submitted is my professional one. I am a 37-year-old student, so I have a career and kids and whatnot. So my resume that I submitted is my professional resume. Was that supposed to be accurate, or is there something else I needed to do?
So, nope, your professional resume is fine.
Okay.
And in terms of your transcripts not showing all of your grades, whatever you uploaded it's just a starting point for those appointments. So that'll work for the appointment with us. But I would maybe talk with your academic advisor and or your Barrett advisor to try to figure out why all of those grades might not be showing up.
Okay. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, you're so welcome. And yes, if you're doing something thesis oriented, there is one award we advise on that is to support that specifically. And then there's also Barrett, separate from that, there's other Barrett funding that can support you with your thesis. And there's other Barrett funding for supporting you doing like a leadership conference or something like that. So yes, and yes, it all just depends.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I see a couple other questions that came through in the chat. So one question is, do you have any advice for someone who wants to apply to one of these awards but needs a letter of recommendation? This is my first semester of ASU Online and don't really know anyone. So depending on the award will determine who the best, some it needs to be from a professor at your current university. Some it does not. Some it can be from a supervisor. Some it can be from somebody outside of the university. Some they explicitly want somebody that is from your like larger community and not necessarily academic related. So it really just depends. Just because it requires a letter of recommendation does not necessarily mean it needs to be like a professor from ASU. There are also a handful of awards we advise on that don't require a letter of recommendation, although nearly all of them do. So it could even be feasible to not need one at all. But in terms of getting to know folks within the ASU system, as an ASU online student, there are a growing number of opportunities to engage in virtual experiences as an ASU online student. They're even open to on-ground students too, but there's research experiences, there's specific events and symposiums and conferences that are happening virtually. And so I suggest trying to engage in those kinds of opportunities where you will meet more people in the virtual space. You have an opportunity to engage with some of your professors that you may have for an ASU online class beyond the online space. And for the professors, you do have beyond the classroom space, excuse me, not beyond the online space. And then for the professors that you have for your online courses, the same thing goes. Like if they have drop-in hours virtually, try to pop in on those and chat with them a little bit more about their overall projects and research and interest. If you have an opportunity to take a class with them more than once, try to do that. If it's a professor who you really like and is talking about things that interest you, right? You don't have to do it just in general with any professor, but those kinds of things. If they're offering extra credit opportunities for working on this project or going to this event, do those things to kind of go that extra mile and build that rapport with those online professors. I do recognize fully that it becomes a little bit more challenging in the online space to build the kinds of relationships for those really robust letters of recommendation in the future, but it's not impossible. And again, there's a number of words that it doesn't have to be from those kinds of folks. So the next question, and hopefully that addressed that question. If it didn't, feel free to add something else in the chat. And then the next question is there a list of programs available for undergraduates with the criteria necessary to apply? Sort of. So when I took you to our website, the scholarship database, this is the list of awards. If you click on each individual hyperlink, it will give you more information about what are the benefits, what's the eligibility, what's the selection criteria, and what's the application process. We do try to keep this as up to date as possible, but because there's so many awards and they're not our awards, right? We're not managing these things. We're not in control of the information. They're not always 100% up to date, but every page also has a direct link to that program page. So that's where you can find further information. But the criteria to apply and everything is so vastly different for all of these awards. So there's not really like just one list where you can see everything in one space for all of the awards, right? It does take some time to like click on each link and kind of read through it a little bit. There's also, for the awards that require nomination or endorsement and some other of the most popular awards, there is the apply page on our website. So any award that requires nomination or endorsement, we have these listed here. What are the preliminary deadlines and what are the submission deadlines? And you can click on those hyperlinks to read more thorough application steps and process information for those particular awards. And then for some of the more common awards we advise on that don't require nomination or endorsement, we also have those listed here with those general deadlines, and then these hyperlinks would take you just directly to those websites. So is there a way to narrow down this list by undergraduate? Not by undergraduate, but if you go to eligible applicants, you can narrow it down by specific level of undergraduate. That's would be the only way to narrow it down by undergraduate specifically. Although I will let you know, nearly everything that's listed on this page is available to undergraduate or undergraduate alumni. Most of the stuff on this page specifically is not for graduate students specifically, although some of it is to pursue graduate school. So how do you know which one's fun trips and which one's give trips? It really just takes some time looking through them to determine that. And it's also something that we can talk through in an advising appointment. I haven't seen any other questions come through. All right. Well, if there's no other questions right now, I will bid you all adieu. It's 1 minute past the end time, so I think we made great use of the time today. I hope you all got something useful out of the session, and we'll be scheduling an appointment sometime soon to talk a little bit more in depth about your individual circumstances and interests and what you might want to apply for. Right? Have a great rest of your evening, or again, morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at.